strategic interventions covering economic sector specification interventions, SMME interventions, inclusive growth interventions, education and skills interventions, and public and social interventions. You will also notice that the approach to this work was guided by not seeking to do too many things, but focus on key strategic areas that promise greater impact within the shortest possible time. To achieve these outcomes, it will require high levels of discipline from all of us and to provide leadership in instances of bottlenecks. And I want to appeal to all of us that let's make South Africa work. By those few words, I will now call our social partners to address this summit. I will start by calling President of BUSA from Organized Business, Mr. Pichan. Can we give him a round of applause?
Thank you very much, Program Director, Honorable Minister Oliphant, Your Excellency, Mr. President, Honorable Minister in the Presidency, Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Ministers here present, Deputy Ministers, government leaders, leaders of the community constituency, in NEDLAC, leaders of the trade union movement, business leaders, and I must include and express appreciation for the presence of the Black Business Council, Executive Director of NEDLAC, Mr. Vilagazi, members of the media, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Our presence here today is in response to your clarion call, Mr. President, and a challenge during your State of the Nation address in February, in which you stirred the nation from its slumber. You called on us to embark on a search for answers, a hunt for solutions. You implored us to roll up our sleeves and to adjust to an upward trajectory from the downward spiral that we seemed to be unable to escape. Since then, you've led from the front, you've made enormous and courageous strides to reclaim our country and to reposition it. You set a clear, strong tone against corruption. You set an agenda to restore the credibility and integrity of the state. In your travels abroad, you have sought to reclaim our place as a nation committed to world peace, multilateralism, free trade, human rights, democracy, and stability. You have sought to reestablish our good name as a country which cares deeply about the plight of the poor and marginalized. In less than a year, South Africa and South Africans are able to say without equivocation that we are led by somebody worthy who stands for those things that we believe in. You haven't joined us to search for durable solutions to deep structural challenges of unemployment. If we don't solve this conundrum, we will condemn many more of our future generations to poverty and social ills that are associated with it because of the yawning gap in equality. With a long list of contributions that our individual enterprises and sector organizations have proposed, we as business say, Tumatina. Tumatina, Mr. President, we want to be there when you start to turn it around. We want, as business, we want to lend a hand in the urgent collective struggle against poverty, unemployment, and inequality. We meet as our economic growth in this country is sluggish, and our businesses are bleeding jobs. Just this week, last week, Stats SA revealed that more than 70,000 jobs were lost in the second quarter, and 13,000 of those in the manufacturing sector alone. Fitch sees our economy growing at a pedestrian 2.2% annually over the next decade, with our progress held back by a number of things, including power shortages, disputes between labor and employers, and continued malaise in the mining sector, we will continue to lag our global peers unless we do something drastically. The data shows that our government simply has no fiscal headroom to catalyze growth without risking our sovereign credit rating and raising borrowing costs for generations. To be sure, we remain precariously placed for the rating reviews that will follow the medium-term budget later this month. The reality we face is that we must grow consistently at more than 6% for us to make a dent in the unemployment. The target is a long way from where we are. We are under no illusion that the job summit will stem the tide of job erosion. But we're gathering here today to generate innovative ideas of stimulating employment creation across the economy. We are here to decide on pragmatic ways to protect jobs wherever possible, and to identify and nurture the potential for new jobs that will help to push the tide back. We're not only hopeful as we embark on this job creation expedition, but also clear that our path will be full of challenges that will require tough and painful choices to resolve it. But these hardships cannot deter us from taking on this important responsibility. We will need to fully leverage our multilateral forums such as NEDLAC in order to find ways to confront and resolve the structural problems that underpin this economic crisis. We've been hard at work crafting a policy framework that is conducive to investment while honoring our constitutional mandate to transform society and achieve socioeconomic justice. Your recently announced stimulus package alludes not only to this important balance, but also the need to prioritize spending to jumpstart the economy. We welcome the intent of the stimulus. Few can argue with the emphasis on better planning and improved use of existing resources to boost growth and employment. The advancement of outstanding reforms also remains crucial if we are to navigate economic growth and make our economy more inclusive. We are painfully aware that our rising public debt requires urgent attention if we are to stabilize the economy. Equally urgent is the imperative for fiscal consolidation, reining in leakage from corruption, and choking off wasteful and irregular expenditure to halt the never-ending call for bailout from state-owned entities. We applaud the cleanup that we've seen in some state companies, and we continue to urge government to employ competent, experienced, and scrupulous leaders as custodians of the state's capital and ambitions of the people. We're encouraged by your administration's appreciation of the pressing need to find solutions to a plethora of challenges we have inherited. Business remains not only ready but willing to assist. I mention this, Mr. President, to suggest that if the Jobs Summit is viewed in isolation from all these other initiatives that I've alluded to and many others, we will mislocate its purpose. It is only one of a range of mutually reinforcing arsenals we are employing to navigate our way out of this challenging environment. And so, indeed, we are committed to ensure that we break the difficult paths ahead of us. As we deliberate today and tomorrow, we need to bear in mind the challenging work of creating the policies that will indelibly influence the lives of millions of our people, their job prospects, their health, their education, their access to basic amenities like water, and overall quality of their daily lives. The most pressing task of finding employment for a largely low-skilled population must also not undermine our long-term goal of cultivating a working population with the skills to thrive in a rapidly changing modern economy. The future of work in South Africa is likely to be impacted by these changes, including automation, artificial intelligence, and robotics. The World Economic Forum predicts that 41% of all work activities in South Africa are susceptible to automation, and that's a staggering number. So as we contend with the structural impediments that are a legacy of the past, we are also keenly aware of the challenges that come with the fourth industrial revolution that is upon us. The digital economy, innovation, artificial intelligence, robotics, and machine learning are already bringing structural changes within industries and labor markets, and all of these at dazzling speed. The seismic technological changes started to disrupt our labor market, and changes to methods and types of jobs that are required by the economy. This summit has not addressed itself to this in any systemic and meaningful way. With the advent of electric cars, we must ask ourselves what the future of petrol attendants. Like the Luddites of the 19th century Europe, the cab drivers of today who see enemies in the Uber drivers are in fact exhaling their future allies in the coming struggle against driverless cars. What will happen to farm workers when smart farming methods are introduced more widely? White-collar jobs won't be exempt either, as we've seen with online banking, which has changed the face of the banking business. We no longer have CD shops in every main street or DVD stores in every suburb. There are fewer bookshops, and I can go on, the list is endless. It is our mistake that we often reflect on these challenges on the digital era without the digital generation leading the charge. We need to rediscover the value of young people in redefining our future. If we fail to prepare in anticipation of those disruptions, our current unemployment problems will soon seem like prosperity in comparison with employment calamity we will face. We must have bifocal vision, fixing the challenges of today and preparing for the future. Part of the preparation entails reforming of our education system to deliver suitably skilled workers in the numbers required. We're currently battling technology literacy, a shortcoming which makes many of our people unemployable in rapidly growing gig economy. To build a pipeline of future skills, Mr. President, our educators should design future-ready curriculum that encourages critical thinking, creativity, and emotional intelligence. We must also accelerate the acquisition of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as the information and communication technology skills, to match the way people will work and collaborate in the fourth industrial revolution. 8 months since SONA and 3 months of collaborative work at NEDLEC, we as the social partners have responded to the call of Tumamina. We have put our heads together and dedicated considerable time and resources in our collective quest for answers to the universal socio-economic question that have stalked the Republic since its independence. How do we grow the economy to create sustainable employment, addressing endemic poverty and inequality? Unlike previous summits, the approach taken here has been bottom-up. I always have to be careful when I use bottom-up because I tend to say bottoms-up, and that can be quite a specter. We're engaging the conversation from a micro perspective. Some of the proposals before us are from companies that don't operate in the sector from which the interventions are targeted. While these innovations are crucial, we must resist focusing on the numbers on the table. We must also factor in that these proposals catalyze growth and change, sparking a multiplier effect with results beyond what data suggests. The Job Summit is cognizant of the full set of economic challenges we are confronted with, but does not pretend that we have all of the answers. But we think that we have some. We cannot underestimate the requirement for long-term economic restructuring. This will be the subject of a follow-up process. We are building on the accords reached among social partners both in NEDLEC and outside. We recognize, for instance, Mr. President, the centrality of finding solutions to the education crisis as a long-term challenge that we've had to deal with. The National Education Collaboration Trust, which was initiated by business in collaboration with labor and government, went beyond merely diagnosing the problem of education, but proceeded to develop a program to resolve these in a collaborative way. Its pilot programs must certainly provide clear signals of what it is that we need to do to advance the sorting out of that challenge. For a low skills-based country, it is unforgivable extravagance and an intolerable waste to have jobless graduates. That is irrespective of the discipline of their training. It is noticeable that some of the agreements seek to address this challenge, targeting TVET graduates for learnerships and apprenticeships as they should those from universities of technology and other institutions of higher education. The three major rating agencies who previously characterized South Africa's labor environment as unstable and volatile, as a credit risk to our country, have commended the national minimum wage and the labor relations amendments as an important step in our long-term development. That process saw the NEDLAC constituencies coming together in a collective effort to find middle ground for the greater good of the country. It is a good example for us to emulate. The Job Summit process is only the start of a continuing conversation we must have about the type of economy we're building, taking into account the pressure and opportunities of the fourth industrial revolution and our location. I believe business has rightly consolidated its place and indeed indicated its commitment. We need to sustain and deepen these interventions as we move to the medium-term budget policy statement, the investment conference and beyond. As we conduct these processes and introspect on what costs will carry us through as a collective, the world indeed is watching. We can choose whether it sees South Africa that is full of unrealized potential because of self-inflicted domestic factors, or one that overcomes these real and daunting challenges to realize the promise enshrined in our Constitution and the Bill of Rights of an economy that can indeed deliver dignity, equality, and freedom to all. We are fortunate that our constitutional framework remains intact. We have a vibrant judiciary and the exemplary custodians of our fiscal and monetary policy in the National Treasury and the Reserve Bank, respectively. We have a loud and free press and a vibrant, multifaceted civil society. In our toolkit, we now have an economic stimulus package and will soon add the outcomes of this job summit to help us to conduct our ongoing dialogue about which economic path to take. What is comforting and encouraging is the return of due process, not only in the policy space, but also in the nature of engagements among economic role players and the social partners at NEDLAC. We are not devoting all of our time and resources protecting our institutions, but instead able to focus on tangible solutions to undo the damage caused over the past years of maladministration. South Africa withstood the global economic meltdown because of its robust counter-cyclical policy instruments, which it deployed to good measure. Those instruments shielded South Africa from financial battering. Social partners were able to come together at NEDLAC because there is no longer mistrust that pervaded institutional frameworks. The current political environment is conducive to dialogue. Our discourse is no longer dominated nor colored by scandals. Substance has returned to public rhetoric as political noise has died down. The paradigm has shifted from public scandals to social partners collaborating in this job summit and in other fora to find solutions to fix our country. We have come a long way, and the job summit is not a complete answer, but it is rather one of the answers to the call of Tumamina. This process is the short-term curtain raiser, if you will, the stage setter for what we expect to be long-term and ongoing engagements about how we best grow our economic pie and ensure redress of inequalities. We've made thoughtful and well-considered inputs to enrich the process in collaboration with other three social partners. As business, we assure you, as our social partners, and we assure you, Mr. President, of our commitment to the outcomes of the Job Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pichani. I will now call Mr. Chefuta, the overall convener of the community. Mr. Chefuta, can we give him a round of applause?
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. Do you know a respectable gentleman called Mr. Kwedemantashe? I had an opportunity of listening to him on a radio interview on SAFM with Tim Udise. So Tim Udise was holding on the other side. Good evening, Mr. Mantashe. It was in the evening around 7. Mr. Mantashe kept on saying good morning on the other side. And you could hear there was a disruption. So when he finally commits and gets to the interview, then Tim Udise asks, should it not be good evening, Mr. Mantashe? He says, where I come from, regardless of the time, when you speak with people for the first time, it's good morning. The President of the Republic of South Africa, the ministers, and the entire government delegation, leaders of civil society in community constituency, leaders and delegates in the labor, the leadership and delegates in business, guests, the executive director of NEDLEC, and all staff of NEDLEC, good afternoon. Molweni. Well, our point of departure is the State of the Nation address that was delivered by His Excellency President Ramaphosa in 2018, where he asserted that at the center of our national agenda in 2018 is the creation of jobs, especially for youth. One of the initiatives we will be convening is the Job Summit, which will be expected to come up with practical solutions and initiatives that will be implemented immediately. We see that as constituting the mandate of this summit. As a social partner that has been involved in all the work, right from the onset, we want to take this opportunity and commend social partners for the collective effort we have put in pursuing this mandate to the best of our abilities. Well, others have argued that we know the challenges that we're confronted with. We know what has to be done. We don't need any more summits. We must just do what has to be done. We are of the different view that we need more of these sessions. But the distinguishing factor between these and any other must be the action. And so, the 2018 Presidential Job Summit must also distinguish itself from many others by making full commitment to take action and implement the agreements of this summit. For some time now, our discourse has been littered with theatrical discussions which at the bottom of it always come to the recitation of the triple challenges of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And we have so ineptly articulated what is happening with all these challenges. To buttress that, the NDP diagnostic report argued that there are two cardinal challenges that we're confronted with. One is that our educational outcomes are too poor, or we do not receive the requisite returns on the investments we make in education. Our outcomes in education are even poorer than countries that invest less than South Africa. The second cardinal challenge is that too few South Africans work, or we have high unemployment in South Africa. The NDP does not only identify those challenges, but it also proposes solutions and set targets. But from where we are now, we are only 11.2 years to the end of the lifespan of the NDP. And others have already written it off that without any hesitation, we are going to miss the targets that have been set in the NDP. We want to argue though, that it is not all lost. We are of the firm view that unless some catalysts are introduced in the implementation of the NDP, we may be holding a false hope against the NDP. As part of the solution, what could be these catalysts that could be introduced to take us closer to fulfilling those noble goals of the NDP? One of those is that we can't escape the function of attracting investments and thereby reigniting economic growth in our society. We have to stimulate and support economic activity through SMMEs and cooperatives, including township and rural-based enterprises. We have to promote and support youth employment in the formal employment and massive efforts towards self-employment of young people through youth entrepreneurship. We have to provide training and skills development to leverage the productive capacities of our young people and people in general. We have to use and leverage the power of procurement as a stimuli. Social partners in their collective resolve and action should take collective action to build confidence on our economy. One of those catalysts should be to restore the integrity of the state and crack down on corruption. In 2016 already, Stats SA advised that South Africa, like the rest of Africa, had entered the demographic window of youth bulge. This suggests that South Africa has a youthful population than any other population group. Now, this presents us with two things. A youth bulge can present opportunities, but it can also present threats. A youth bulge presents opportunities only when we invest in the lives of young people, through which we can then go and claim the demographic dividend. If we continue to recite the challenges of young people as a ticking time bomb and just look at them, we are not investing in the lives of young people. They will become a threat to the very same essence of stability and democracy in society. And so, our call is that we must spare no effort in making all the necessary investments to develop and empower our youth as our resource and our future. The same report of Stats SA suggested that empirically, there are three structural binding constraints to youth unemployment. One is education, two is skills, three, it is race. Well, we can understand education and skills, and we have dedicated a lot of time in discussing that work in the processes of the Job Summit. But what does the race aspect mean? It means that those who are African and black in general have less chances of finding employment, not because they have not done anything or they have done anything, only because they are who they are. That on its own becomes a setback, and we cannot say anything about that. Coupled with that is the phenomenon of unemployed graduates. If left unchecked, the phenomenon of unemployed graduates is going to contest space with the very same value and essence of education. These unemployed graduates are going to wake up and ask a question one day. If we are graduates and our fate is as the same as those who have not had education, what is the value of education? We must do all it takes. We must do all it takes to make sure that the investments we make in education do not go to waste. We use those young people as a resource that will be there to grow our economy through the skills that they shall have acquired. Our society, we argued long time ago, that must be happy to have had a generation of young people that demanded free quality education or free quality education. Because at that point in time, there were no instances where young people were waking up to demand tenders, whether they had companies or not. But we are seeing that happening today. that people wake up and say, there is no one who's going to do any work in this community if we do not have 30%, if we do not have 40%. And therefore, the value that we make in our investments in education with our young people is a value that we must not take for granted. When young people stand up and demand education and skills, they are making a difficult choice which many others have not taken. They are taking a choice to say, empower us with education and skills so that we can build our own houses, we can afford our own health care, so that they do not stand in the queues for free health care, for free housing, for free many other things that are provided by government. That is the choice that they are making. What could be the solutions practically in addressing the challenges that we have in education and skills? The first is that our education system in its entirety must have multiple exit points. There is now empirical evidence that those who start grade 1, whichever year they do, by the time they get to grade 10, more than 50% of them drop out from grade 10. We may argue that they qualify to go to TVET colleges, but our system has been designed to tell everyone that you go and get grade 12, even if you're going to come back down and go to a TVET college. But if, as part of our education system, there was an exit route after standard 7, grade 9, those multitudes of young people would have appreciated the fact that that is the point at which they exit school. Society is not going to write them off. Instead, it is going to channel them to TVET colleges, because it is through TVET colleges that we can provide technical, occupational, and vocational skills that are so much needed in the areas of investments that even government is investing in. When we do that, we must be making a bold statement that we are sitting with the majority of people that we should be talking about finding jobs but not having grade 12. And we're not saying anything about them. Some of them are walking around collecting papers. We don't see value in the opportunities that they do in collecting card boxes. All we see is the inconvenience of these people who pull big trolleys in the tar road when we should be driving our luxurious cars. We can't write them off. They are part of our society. They have a legitimate claim to democracy and development and prosperity in South Africa. All institutions that provide education and training must have an embedded mandate of providing work readiness program, job preparedness, such that we smooth the transition from school to work, such that we cut all the red tape that would enable people who leave school to find employment. Because empirically, if young people leave school and they do not find employment, even an internship, it may take them longer or forever to ever find the first work that they should be doing. State-owned companies, SETAs, TVET colleges, and the private sector must collaborate to deliver technical, vocational, and occupational skills. There are relationships that, as social partners, we must build. Colleges must open themselves up to be influenced by business on the necessary skills that are required by the labor market. Business must embrace that challenge with the greatest warmth it can. On the other side, when these young people acquire this training, there has to be placement opportunities for them to exercise what they shall have learned. We want to make a clarion call in this summit that if we are serious about youth employment, we must, in the subsequent discussions, emerge with a full commitment that all young people who go through TVET colleges are going to receive 100% placement as part of work integrated learning or upon completion, because we believe that the existing skill system can basically afford that. We should affirm the principle of second chances. Instead of problematizing the lack of education and skills, there are many young people who have tried school and dropped out. We must run a campaign to bring them back, even in high schools. There are many who have dropped out in institutions of higher learning. Who knows if we recruit them within the shortest space of time upon their completion, we may completely change the complexion of what we're decrying as skills development. There are many projects that we are implementing in society. Our call is that no project should be implemented without such project having a skills plan as a prerequisite to determine what are the skills that are going to be required in those projects, even those projects that will be coming through the investments that the president is championing, such that we position ourselves to build skills for those projects well in advance. We also position ourselves to build skills through the implementation of those projects when they are actually being implemented. When we look into the economic sector interventions, we know that there are huge investments that go into infrastructure development, green economy, digital migration, and you name them many. But the opportunities that we should see there is that it is through those projects that we must provide work integrated learning opportunities to young people. It is through those projects that we must provide employment opportunities to the unemployed. It is through those projects that we should provide those who are already qualified with work experience exposure. It is through those projects that we should provide entrepreneurs in the communities where those projects are taking place with economic opportunities in the mainstream, the down, and the side stream of the activities that are taking place there. We also know that there are penalties that accrue from the competition, penalties, BE, employment equity. Now, if you take one example on the Competition Act penalties, penalties are charged, they are paid, and they go into the national fiscus. This is just a discussion, Minister Nene. But the essence of those who collude is to close space for new entrants into the market. So the monies that accrue from there should not only go into the national fiscus, but they must go to stimulate the penetration of those who have been barred to enter the market by those who have colluded. The same should apply to BE. The same should apply to employment equity. With SMME support, let's just raise these few issues loosely. That there should be a full life cycle of what we provide to entrepreneurs in the SMME space as part of the solution. One is that entrepreneurship can be taught. So entrepreneurship education, especially amongst young people, should be one of the pillars of the work that we do in supporting SMMEs. We have experiences, even through the Youth Employment Accord, where 2.7 billion was committed. But 5 years on, there was no much movement on that, only because we committed money without dedicated focus of building a pipeline of enterprises that will have the capacity to access that. And that calls on us to have business development support as one of those. And market opportunities should be provided to the SMMEs. In conclusion, there are simple things that we can wake up and do even tomorrow in stimulating and creating jobs. One of those is that if we encourage young people to go to TVET colleges, it discourages young people not to see job adverts having TVET qualifications as a requirement. And so that is one of the recommendations that we can have. We must not bar young people from entering the labor market by high demands for experience. We must equally consider the potential they have, because experience is required in the workplace. And lastly, we have to have dedicated support to provide the unemployed with the practical costs of looking for employment, such that we make sure that as they look for those opportunities, they know that they have all the necessary support. With those few words, we wish to thank you very much. Siyabonga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chefuta. I just want to say the reason why I have allowed them even to go beyond is because of the instruction of the President. He said I must not cut them. I will now allow a disciplined constituency that I believe they will be within their allocated time. I will now call the overall convener of organized labor, Mr. Njali Njali.
Amandla. Program Director, I have prepared 4 speeches. The first 2 was to bracket Bijan depending on what he said and to speak in response. The third one was in case the program is changed and the President speaks first, how are we to respond? And the third one, of course, the fourth one was the original speech. I'm not sure which one I'm reading now, but just bear that in mind in case I read the wrong one. Program Director, Minister Oliphant, I must declare to this House that you are my mother-in-law. And I understand exactly the discipline, what it means. Because I've stood in platform with you and said something in opposition to what you said on my mandate, and I've been warned at home that a stubborn fly follows the corpse to the grave, and I understand what it means. So, Program Director, President Ramaphosa, Minister in President, and all other ministers present, leaders of organized business, leaders and representatives of the community constituencies in Network, leaders of organized labor. I've seen the director of the ILO in Pretoria office and the chairperson of the CCMA, distinguished guests, colleagues, and comrades. Firstly, I want to, on behalf of Labour, to join you, Minister, in sharing your loss on Comrade Edna Molewa, a former trade unionist, a shop steward, a deputy president of one of our unions in Sakau, where you are coming from. Indeed, we share the same sentiments like you. Coming back to what we are advised to say, on the occasion like this, compel us to shift aside what make us to differ and focus more on what make us to be one nation, one country, and put the interest of the most vulnerable above everything else. In our view, today's gathering symbolizes a commitment to discuss the future of our country in the very literal sense. In 2017, organized labor submitted a Section 77 notice in Network, prompted by the massive job losses and increasing unemployment. The outcome of that engagement was a call for a job summit. Few months later, the President have listened to the calls that have been made, promised to convene this presidential job summit. And we understand it, Minister, it is not a Network summit. is a presidential summit under the auspices of NETLEC. Legally speaking, it is a NETLEC summit. Question that has been asked is whether this will do justice. Many people and opinion makers have already predicted that this will be another talk shop and that there will be nothing tangible coming out of this engagement. In our view, this may be only possible if our coming together is just to share platitudes and to not have a real commitment to turn around this economy and fix the enormous problem of unemployment. Our response is that this is not an event but a process, needing courage and people who are committed to walk the talk, that the route we're taking moving forward is going to be difficult and complex, but it is a journey that all of us have no choice but to walk. NETLEC constituencies thought deeply on how the processes of engagement should evolve leading to summit. We agreed that for it to succeed, it should be handled differently from other summits, but should lean to the processes that we followed when we responded to the global crisis in 2009. Minister Patel was here, Trevor Manuel and Rob Davids and others were there. This is what we thought we should be following, that we are not debating today these issues, we're expecting to receive the outcome of the engagement. In that context, I want to take this opportunity to thank all those who participated in the work that will be presented by the President today for our consideration. We know that the process has been not easy. It has not been smooth sailing. People have been hurt. It has been rough, but I think they should take comfort that today they are able to present an outcome. There have been times during this process that organized labor almost pull out, but we remember that social dialogue is not easy. In trade union engagement, by its nature and character, social dialogue is a difficult process but necessary. Hence, it surprises us when some among us are shouting proudly to boycott social engagement. President Ramaphosa, in your State of the Nation address, which organized labor had no contributing in writing, you said, and I quote, "The summit need to take extraordinary measures to create jobs on a scale we have never before seen in our country." Indeed, we share the sentiment. But let us be reminded, what is the problem we're trying to address? It is an economy that is not growing at the pace required to address the needs of our people. And in that, it is shedding jobs on a massive scale. At the same time, our economy is producing millionaires. There's about 25.9 million economically active people. Out of this, only 16.2 million are employed, of whom 50% earn less than 5,000 rands a month. We call them, these 50%, the working poor. Over 9 million are unemployed, whose majority is the young people, some of whom have no hope or prospect of working in their entire life. And the implications of this are devastating. Unemployment is primary cause to poverty and inequality, contributing immensely to the social dysfunctional and political instability. Unemployment is an assault to the social fiber of our communities and human dignity. It drives and exposes the young people to gangsterism, to crime, to violence, and we call this a crisis. We're mentioning all this not because no one knows about them, but want to drive the point that we have a crisis in our hand. We all know there's these challenges. We have talked about them. We have debated them for a very long time, and we have differed on how best to address them. This gathering is not about debating them. It was planned in a manner to avoid paralysis by analysis. Hence, the purpose of coming together is to develop and adopt solutions that are clear and measurable. If we cannot measure them, we will probably not adopt them. Your guidance, President, was that this process is not a process for lamentation, but a forum to provide concrete suggestion. For us as Labour, is that in order to find a solution to any problem, the cardinal prerequisite is to first comprehend what the problem is, the nature and the extent and the implication of not addressing the problems. It gives us pleasure, therefore, President, that at last the Network constituency fully comprehend the unemployment crisis. It goes on to say this problem is not insurmountable. It can be addressed, and it must be addressed. We have to attend to. We're encouraged that all constituencies appreciate that the time is not on our side. This, in our view, is very important. Secondly, the understanding that addressing economy and employment or underemployment challenges is not a once-off or an event, but a process that needs leadership, time frames, discipline, assessment, and evaluation along the way. Thirdly, that it is important to have capacity, coordination, and reprioritization and agency as a prerequisite for this project to succeed. Fourthly, that whatever the agreement is reached, it must be implementable and the resources must be made available both in terms of finance as well as a human resource. Fifthly, the common understanding, the negative and the damaging impact of corruption, that corruption anywhere poses danger to the society everywhere, and therefore the signing of the pledge is very important to us. The report that our negotiators give us, or the negotiators give us comfort that policy will be discussed in the next phase of engagement, and we hope that everybody and everyone will be able to participate equally. It might be important, Comrade President, just to remind all of us as we move forward that we came to this summit with a number of demands. We wanted the summit to engage on the problem that we are facing in the manner that the constituencies appreciate the problem faced by the workers and the unemployed and to provide solution. That we wanted a moratorium on retrenchment across all sectors of the economy and the filling of critical vacancies in the public services. We wanted a bold, decisive intervention in the sectors which are shedding jobs. We wanted to urgently discuss and reshape the training layoff schemes. We wanted a regular space under the presidency for social partners to engage on solving the unemployment crisis. For us, we demanded that the microeconomic and the labor chapters of the NDP must be addressed. We wanted also a systematic intervention to address the inclusive growth and distribution. We wanted the end of the investment strike, but at the same time, we wanted labor to discuss how to utilize the worker capital in the manner that creates jobs. We wanted a just transition, not only on the climate change, but also on the fourth industrial revolution. As we conclude, Mama Zala, before I'm reminded of the stubborn fly, we noted, President, that the people that we have invited, we have not seen the faith-based organization, not because I'm coming from the church and I'm speaking on their behalf. We have not seen the traditional leaders, not because Unkosi Holomisa is here. But we understand your fear, that when you invite people to attend, they refused. When you don't invite them, they threaten to come in any way. But we encourage you to continue inviting them so that they don't attend. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nchali. Ladies and gentlemen, can we please give a big round of applause to our social partners? But I just want to say on the issue of those who have been mentioned by Umkwenyan, traditional leaders, faith-based organization are here. They did come here through the community constituency. The overall convener has confirmed that. Allow me to call on the minister in the presidency to come and introduce the president. Minister Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. Can we give her a round of applause?
Thank you very much. Protocol, presidents, ministers, the constituencies of NEDLEG, leaders of labor, leaders of business, ladies and gentlemen. President, Batangik introduce. President, I think we all know him. I can introduce him using the long introduction or the short one. The short one. Okay. Using the short one, we all know that in one way or the other, he has been part of this network. He's part of the labor. He has been part of business. He's part of government. So even though we say it's not his NEDLEG summit, it's still his summit across the board. But let me also say that, President, in introducing you, I want to stress, not for selfish reasons, but the fact that you are the author of the NDP. You were the deputy chair of the National Planning Commission that gave us the NDP. And in that NDP, in your diagnostic, you stressed the issue of unemployment, poverty, inequality. You also said by 2030, we must have created 11 million jobs and reduced unemployment to less than 6% or to around 6%. Now, Mr. President, I would like to think that this is the beginning of those 11 million jobs. And who better than yourself, the author, to also lead us in the implementation? So, Mr. President, I would like to introduce you, but also to say there is lots of expectation around work and this president. because he's not only the President of South Africa for now, but he's also the co-chair of the Global Commission on the Future of Work globally. So the globe will be looking very closely at what we do in South Africa so that they can also have expectations globally for your contribution. So without a long introduction, the President said I mustn't forget to say that he is a doctor by marriage. So I present to you the President of the ruling party of the Republic and Mr. Tumamina himself.
Thank you. Let's be seated, please. Program Director, Minister of Labour, Minister Mildred Oliphant, NEDLAC Executive Director, Mr. Matoda Vilagazi, Ministers and Deputy Ministers, and leaders of labour, business, community sector, members of the diplomatic corps who are here, our traditional leaders who are here, our religious leaders, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a real joy to stand before you at this job summit, which many of us have looked forward to having. Those of you who have had the privilege of listening to Peggy carefully will know that when he said that this is not a presidential summit and that this is a NEDLAC summit, he actually wanted to say that, like it or not, this is an organized labor summit. And we've all been invited to this summit. And he and I often don't agree on many things. And he's not shy to vocalize the fact that, President, I don't agree with you. But today, on one thing we do agree on, is that we agree that this summit, or we agreed before we came here, that we would not use this summit as a platform for lamentation, but we are going to use this summit as a platform to seek and find solutions to resolve the unemployment crisis in our country. And I'm glad that he's living up to that. Hasn't he really grown up? You can see he has grown up. I recently read what Ms. Kilebohile Liepile wrote in her report called Life in South Africa, Reason for Hope, as part of her work at the South African Institute of Race Relations. And she starts her report by saying, how do you tally the progress or otherwise made by a society such as South Africa's jobless growth, yes, unemployment, no better life for all, failure to improve social and economic circumstances, failed transformation, she writes, a low point for race relations, worsening poverty and inequality. These are all comments, she continues, that often appear in the mainstream media. If these statements, she says, collectively seek to suggest that there is a great deal wrong with our society, this is because in far too many areas, South Africa does not deliver on its potential to become a fully free and prosperous society. Close quotes. I found this instructive as we gather here and wondered whether we should not use this moment, and particularly this summit, to deliver on what she says we don't use our potential to address the challenges that our country faces. And I wonder to myself whether do we not have a moment at this summit to do precisely that and unleash the potential that we have as a nation to address the issue of joblessness and unemployment. We gather here today to answer the call of the people of our country for decent work. And we have gathered here also as social partners, yes, as business, labor, community, as well as government, having agreed on a broad range of measures to create and to protect jobs. Now, this is the moment that many in our country have been waiting for. They've been waiting to see whether labor, business, government, and community will arrive at a stage where we will agree on a number of interventions that we could utilize as instruments to address the unemployment crisis and challenge that we face. Unemployment is the greatest challenge facing our country. At this moment in the history of our country, we have just too many people who are unemployed. And unemployment diminishes our ability to be able to achieve a number of goals, to eradicate poverty, to tackle inequality, and to also improve the lives of the working class and the working poor in our country. Unemployment has a devastating effect on families. It also has a terrible effect on communities. It erodes people's dignity. As you look at unemployed people in our country, they go around the streets of our country, the pathways of our villages, aimless. They almost go around like zombies. People who are able-bodied without work have their dignity destroyed and eroded. That is what unemployment does. And it contributes to social problems like poor health, poor educational outcomes, substance abuse, and also criminality. The extreme unemployment in this country is the product of an economy that for several decades has been starved of any meaningful investment in its human capital, where most people have been denied the opportunity to own assets and to utilize those assets to get on with their lives, as well as to develop their skills. The structure of our economy, which was built on the extraction of minerals, where ownership and the control of those assets are highly concentrated and remain to this day untransformed. As a result, the decline of the mining industry and manufacturing has cost the country millions of jobs, and much economic capacity has been destroyed. Low levels of growth in recent years has undermined our efforts to overcome the economic legacy of apartheid. Policy uncertainty, as well as policy inconsistency, the onerous regulations that we have, and the declining business and consumer confidence have also curtailed investment in the productive sectors of our economy. There have also been significant levels of public investment in a number of areas and infrastructure that in the past have kept our economy afloat, particularly following the 2008 global financial crisis. That has tapered off as consumption spending and debt servicing costs have consumed a great portion of our budget. Our economic performance has also been undermined by state capture and corruption in both public institutions, and now of late we're seeing and learning of what this is also doing in a number of private companies or private institutions. State capture and corruption has undermined investor confidence, we must admit, but it has also undermined public trust. It has eroded key institutions of the state and diverted resources that were intended to support development and therefore to raise the levels of life of our people. While progress has been made in lifting millions of our people out of dire poverty, many of our people still face great hardship across the length and the breadth of our country. The apartheid special landscape makes economic opportunities scarce. It increases the cost of living and diminishes the quality of life of many of our people. Many people, especially young people, lack the skills and the work experience needed to find a job and also to participate meaningfully in the economy, as we were hearing from Tulani earlier. As we speak, rising international oil prices combined with investor concerns about emerging economies are pushing up the price of petrol and other fuels, making life harder and much more expensive for all South Africans, but particularly for poor people in our country. The jobs that have been created over the past few years have not kept pace with the growth of the population or the expansion of the workforce. We have therefore gathered here at this job summit to respond to these challenges, to respond meaningfully to the economic challenges that our country faces, which manifest themselves through unemployment, poverty, and inequality, because that is the real impact that these have on our people. In the National Development Plan, we said that if we were to effectively and sustainably tackle this triple challenge, we should aim to reduce unemployment to at least 6% by 2030. Where our unemployment stands today, we do need to acknowledge that we will not be able to reach that target unless we do something extraordinary. Since the announcement of the Job Summit in the State of the Nation address, all social partners have been engaged in intensive discussions to find and to craft an agreement to begin to address this crisis. And I wish to sincerely commend and to thank the social partners who've been hard at work through their various delegates in the various working committees that were established, because they have worked extremely hard, and they are the ones who have made this job summit possible today. And let's give them a round of applause for the wonderful work that they have been doing. And also thank our colleagues at NEDLAC for having kept the process together. As we heard from the General Secretary Beki, yes, there were moments when some of them wanted to walk out, when some of them thought that no progress would ever be made. Some thought that this was just going to be a talk shop. And I'd like to thank them as well for having stuck to the task. And as I met them from time to time as they gave me their reports and urged them and egged them to carry on, I realized that this is truly a very difficult task. But today we are grateful that they have been able to reach consensus on a number of issues. The social partners have agreed that this Presidential Job Summit will emerge with a framework agreement that is both ambitious and realizable. It is the product of intensive engagement amongst all of them over all these months since February. It has been done in a spirit of cooperation, underpinned by the need to reach consensus on a number of issues, but it has also been done on the basis that the unemployment challenge that we face should be seen as a common problem to all of us as South Africans, and that it does not belong to any one single social partner, be it government or business or labor or communities. It belongs to all of us, and therefore it behoves on all of us to find solutions, to come up with interventions that are going to help us to address this challenge. Importantly, the framework that has been arrived at provides the outline of an emerging social compact to grow an inclusive economy and fundamentally change our society as well. One of the great difficulties we've faced in recent years is that cooperation between communities, labor, and government and business has weakened, making it difficult to advance the collective interest. Countries that have succeeded very well in tackling the economic challenges that they themselves have faced, as well as social problems, are countries that have been willing to get all partners to sit down and reach agreement on what needs to be done and to work together to ensure that it truly does get done. Countries like Ireland, the Netherlands, and Spain have been successful in forging social accords in response to economic difficulties and challenges that they have faced right through the modern era that we live in. Yet in South Africa, with low levels of trust, weak confidence, and heightened social tensions, we have neglected what I would call our strongest and greatest asset, our ability to unite and work together. It was by working together that we managed to overcome the nightmare of apartheid. That is what brought an end to what many people believed was an intractable conflict that had raged for generations. We were able to, in an inclusive way, to write a democratic constitution that guarantees the equal rights for all the people of our country. Now, this framework agreement gives us the opportunity to once again develop trust and forge cooperation amongst all of us as social partners. Through this framework agreement, we are demonstrating that we are capable of developing a new social compact for jobs, for growth, and for transformation of our economy. This Presidential Job Summit is just the start of the process of serious engagement that will intensify in the coming months. As I had a few occasions to meet with all the social partners, they kept saying, we need more time to sit amongst ourselves to discuss important issues that range from the structure of our economy, the future trajectory of our economy, the skills challenge that our country faces, the educational outcomes of our education system, challenges of climate change, yes, the future of work, and a whole range of other things. This is what the social partners united in the NEDLAC process have been saying they want to do. So this summit is the beginning, is the real start of a process that will engage all the social partners in serious engagement. It is therefore not a once-off event, but the first phase of an extensive process in which all of us will work closely together to improve growth, to protect existing jobs, and to work together to create new jobs, because this is a common problem to all of us. The framework agreement makes provision for monitoring mechanisms, including the setting up of a presidential jobs committee that will be composed of all the social partners, what I would call, or what I have dubbed, the Presidential Jobs Brains Trust. And each time I've met them, I've said to them, colleagues, combined here and meeting here in this setting is the true brains trust of our nation with regard to job creation. And let us therefore utilize this strength and this platform to make sure that indeed we do address the unemployment challenge in our people, in our nation. And so this Presidential Jobs Committee will ensure effective implementation of the measures that we will need to take on the issues that we have agreed on. It acknowledges that there are several areas that do indeed require further work, further refinement, and social partners have agreed to devote more time, as I was saying, to discuss and to reach consensus on those. And their approach is, there is no problem without a solution, rather than, this is just too difficult, we are not going to be able to find solutions to the challenge that we face. I will now touch on the key issues that the social partners have agreed should emerge from this job summit. As a critical starting point, they have agreed that in the current economic environment, the job summit must focus on both creating new jobs and retaining existing jobs. All social partners have committed themselves to concrete steps that need to be taken to avoid retrenchments and to support struggling companies. Now, this is an important agreement that has been arrived at. Yes, all social partners initially were poles apart before they agreed to this type of arrangement. And this is to address the challenge so that we are able to ensure that the challenge and the problem of retrenchments or job losses or layoffs is addressed in quite an innovative way to minimize the impact on people as a whole. We have agreed that the training layoff scheme, which was introduced, should be utilized. It was introduced in response to the 2008 crisis, should immediately be revived and improved because it has been lying there and it is an instrument that can be utilized with good effect. Business and government have also agreed to establish what we call a rapid response group of teams of experts to assist businesses that are in crisis. There is agreement that all possible alternative as well as opportunities need to be explored before retrenchment is considered, including executive salary sacrifices and the foregoing of dividends. Now, this I regard as a revolutionary decision that, yes, before we opt for just throwing people into the street and saying you have lost your jobs, a number of alternatives as well as opportunities should be utilized. And yes, they should include sacrifices that will also be made by those who earn high salaries. A number of people have said that this is, yes, something that we are prepared to do. And I hope that they live up to precisely that they have committed themselves to. For the economy to grow and for jobs to be created, it is essential that there is substantial increase in domestic demand. This means that South African companies, the government itself, and consumers must commit to buying local. If we do not buy the food that comes out of South African soil, there will be no farms and no farm workers. It will just be job losses. Is that what we want? No, that is not what we want. If we do not buy goods made by South African hands, there will be no factories and no workers. Is that what we want? No, that is not what we want. The most direct way for South Africans and South African companies to create jobs is to buy only South African products. And this is the time to put South Africa first. This is the time to put South Africans first. And this we say not in an arrogant way, like it is said elsewhere. We say it with deep meaning, with deep feeling, that when it comes to buying local, that is where we want to put our country first. So yes, maybe we must also develop our own slogan of a special type, that South Africa first in a special way, not in an arrogant way. This is a message that must reverberate across the country, and that must find expression in concrete action. The framework agreement goes into detail on measures to promote local procurement, both within the public and the private sectors, even to the point of outlining the specific interventions that can be taken in each sector and in each company, in various companies. Government has undertaken to simplify as well as to speed up the process for the designation of products for local procurement, and organized labor in partnership with Proudly South Africa will proactively identify opportunities for new designations as well. As part of this agreement, a number of companies have made specific commitments to local procurement initiatives as part of their organizational strategies. And these companies have come forward and have said, this is what we are prepared to do to enhance job creation in our country. They include companies like Adcock Ingram, Anglo Gold Ashanti, Clientele, Coca-Cola South Africa, Edcon, First Rand, Lixil, Mondi, Nando's, Nestle, AB InBev, Sapi, Sasol, Standard Bank, and Tsogosan and a number of all others. Now, let's give them a round of applause in advance as we move forward. They will be the first to be invited to join a Buy South Africa Circle, which recognizes companies that are leaders in buying local and have demonstrated in practice their commitment to supporting South African enterprise, and by so doing, supporting the creation of jobs in South Africa. Companies that sign up to this commitment will, amongst other things, be celebrated, be acknowledged at an annual dinner that will be convened by the President. On an annual basis, we will celebrate and acknowledge them. And who does not want to come to a dinner like that? So we invite all those companies to come. I can promise you the meal is presidential, the setting is presidential, and everything is just great, representing the best of what South Africa is all about. While promoting local demand, the social partners have also identified the need to more aggressively promote South African exports. From this job summit, we will embark on an export drive that prioritizes manufactured and processed goods from our own country. Yes, addressing the issue of beneficiation, addressing the issue of adding value to what we export and sell to other nations, ensuring that we derive full employment benefit from our mineral and agricultural resources and everything that we have in abundance. We will seize the opportunities presented by regional integration process and the establishment of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to produce more goods for other African markets. Africa is waiting for us to bring in more and more goods, and the platform that we now are going to have of having a free trade area on our continent is going to boost the manufacturing base in our own country so that we can export as much as we are able to do so. Social partners have also agreed to unblock impediments to expanding exports, such as inefficiencies at ports and poor knowledge of potential markets, and to ensure greater support to companies seeking export opportunities. Now, this was arrived at with inputs from labor and from business because they are the ones who experience some of these difficulties. The coming together of all these social partners gave us a chance to be able to identify real bottlenecks which, if removed, would be able to lead to more and more increased exports. Through this framework agreement, we will be mobilizing also another area of great difficulty for many businesses in our country, finance. We want to mobilize that on a far greater scale, ensuring that it is focused on building our manufacturing capacity so that our country can re-industrialize, so that our manufacturing base can come back to its original self, but in a much more enhanced way as we transform our economy. The financial sector, as part of the Transformation Code, will invest 100 billion rand over 5 years in black-owned industrial enterprises. This is a great boon indeed. Government will work with the financial sector to develop facilities for financing at preferential rates and extended repayment terms. The social partners have also agreed on strategic interventions in economic sectors that have great potential for growth and even more potential for employment creation. So we will identify those various sectors, and we will, in a very active and proactive manner, be able to make those interventions. the agriculture and agro-processing value chain as set out in the National Development Plan, as well as the 9-point plan, is one area that has significant potential. It is estimated that global demand for fresh food or fresh produce could increase South Africa's horticultural trade from 54 billion rand to 90 billion rand by 2030. This is a great opportunity that the social partners are going to look to mining, to enhancing, to make sure that we get the greatest benefit out of. Through our program of accelerated land reform, we will expand the area of land under cultivation, under irrigation, to substantially increase the number of people productively working the land. One writer yesterday, Ben Cousins, wrote in an article in the Business Day that there are 200,000 black and emerging farmers who we now need to focus our attention on. And this government has all the great intention to focus on those as we proceed with our land reform program. We will also be focusing on rural dwellers, the ownership, on issues like ownership and tenure rights that are also needed to unlock the economic potential of the land in our country. Specific interventions include the procurement of new hectares under black ownership and redirecting expenditure to black-owned as well as women-owned farmers who are also producers and processors. Blended finance models for effective agricultural support are also being addressed and are being finalized. In addition to government initiatives amounting to approximately 600 million, as Agbiz and the Banking Association of South Africa have developed a blended finance model that is designed specifically to make additional funds available to assist potential redistribution beneficiaries to access capital in a much easier way. In the metals and mining and machinery sector, government has agreed to expeditiously finalize an export tax on scrap metal and ensure better access to incentives like downstream steel industry competitiveness fund. Other value chains that are receiving focused attention include subsectors of the manufacturing industry in areas such as clothing, textiles, leather, footwear, furniture, as well as the automotive industry. Organized labor, through one of its member unions, plans to open a union-owned clothing factory in the Eastern Cape within the next 2 years. This initiative, now this is a union, and this innovative and welcome initiative will create quite a number of jobs. It will create, at the very least, 100 jobs initially, and aims to contribute to the re-industrialization of a province which suffers from widespread poverty and unemployment. And this is something that the unions should be applauded for, because now they are moving up the curve and demonstrating that they too can be job creators. And I applaud that union. Colleagues, if we are to succeed in creating the number of jobs we need, it is essential, very essential, that small and medium and micro enterprises like those that the union is getting involved in and many others take their rightful place in the economic life of our nation, just as Minister Lindiwe Zulu has taken her rightful place in advocating the role of small and medium enterprises. Social partners have agreed to maximize the collaboration between the public and private sector, particularly in the hubs and incubators that these entities have created. Government will continue to advocate, educate, and assist, but also monitor the implementation of the 30% set aside for SMMEs by all spheres of government and their agencies. We agreed on this set aside, and its ability to help us create jobs is quite huge. We are now intent on making sure that this is a reality, and the Presidential Jobs Committee is going to be focusing on this very closely to make sure that indeed this 30% set aside does indeed happen. One of the country's greatest potential strengths is our young population, whose capabilities and talents the social partners are committed to develop as a matter of priority. A specific area of focus is the development of the technical skills that are required in the industrial economy. Thulani has already gone to great length to actually describe the challenges that young people face, and particularly those who are also graduates, that they graduate from all these institutions but do not get work. And when they do seek work, they are asked to come with an experience certificate. And it is for that reason that young people have said the issue of experience must now be done away with. They must be brought into the job situation because that's where they are going to get their experience. Mechanisms are being put in place to enable companies to form partnerships with nearby TVET colleges, where the colleges offer the theoretical component of the program and companies offer the practical and workplace components. This is part of a series of initiatives supported through the framework agreement to ensure that graduates are absorbed into the economy. Yes, Thulani says that young people at TVET colleges would like to know that as they leave TVET colleges, they do have guaranteed jobs. This is what happens in Germany. In Germany, as young people leave their training colleges, they are already guaranteed of jobs. Why can we not live up to that as well? Because it is possible and it can be done. And we would like this to be done and to be focused on, because through that, we will be able to create many more jobs for the young people in our country. Effective skills development on a large scale will not only help to expand the opportunities and the capabilities of young people, but will also assist in reducing the wage gap between the lowest and the highest paid due to skills scarcities. One of the greatest barriers to investment, to growth, and to job creation is corruption within all spheres of government, state-owned enterprises, and companies. We are determined as government to intensify the work we have already started to end state capture and to root out corruption wherever it occurs and by whomever it is done, to bring those responsible to book so that they can be accountable for their wrongs. The social partners have agreed to support the government's anti-corruption strategy and to develop their own complementary strategies of dealing with corruption. Business is committed to implementing a zero-tolerance approach to corruption and will develop certain initiatives to develop training of its various people to combat corruption. Social partners agreed on the need to introduce financial disclosure for all relevant government employees and also conduct lifestyle audits. Through this job summit, government, labor, business, and the community sector have agreed on concrete interventions to boost employment. And a number of those who've been looking at this summit and saying that this is going to be another talk shop have been dismissing the efficacy of this summit and its effectiveness. But we would like to say that this time around, we are determined to implement the various interventions that labor, business, communities, and government have come up with. And they have come up with a plethora of interventions. And you may say that this is just a cocktail of wishes and things that people would like to see done. It has been thoroughly processed, thoroughly discussed over the past few months since February. And I am satisfied that we've now calibrated what needs to be done to embark on the various interventions. In my input now, I am by no means touching on every intervention that needs to be made or to be embarked upon or that has been agreed to. There are quite a number of others, and the time and space that one has in talking here at the podium does not give one the ability to cover everything. But I can say without any equivocation that the social partners have actually risen to the challenge, and they have come up not only with a wonderfully crafted framework, but they've also come up with a structure which is going to monitor, which is also going to report on an ongoing basis to the President on what we are working on to address the job challenge that our nation faces. We estimate that the interventions that they've come up with will create an additional 275,000 direct jobs a year. This is over and above the jobs that would have been created without these interventions, which was on average about 300,000 a year over the past few years. The Job Summit agreement complements other initiatives to create jobs. In addition to what has been agreed to between the social partners under the auspices of NEDLEC, several companies are working either individually or with others in their sector, and they are approaching government and disclosing to us precisely what they want to do. A number of companies and players in our economy have got plans to expand and create new jobs. They have taken the initiative themselves, understanding that sustainable employment creation is beneficial to their own businesses, to the communities in which they have their operations or are located, and to broader society. They also understand that job creation is part of a virtuous cycle that is going to lead to a whole number of other great benefits. Greater employment increases demand for goods and services, enabling, yes, established companies to expand and new ones to emerge, thereby creating more job opportunities and also creating demand. Demand in our economy is one thing that is mostly needed. Now, the stimulus recovery plan that we announced the other day is one of those areas where we believe jobs will be created. The framework agreement that will emerge from this summit provides significant additional impetus to the implementation of this economic stimulus and recovery plan that we put forward. The plan includes a range of immediate measures to restore the economy to growth, improve investor confidence, and also to establish a platform for greater job creation. As part of the plan, government will, as we've all heard, but one wants to repeat it for good emphasis, so that it is seen as part of the broader plan or strategy that we have to address the challenge of unemployment. We want to implement growth-enhancing economic reforms, many of which we have announced. We want to reprioritize, yes, our spending to support job creation. We want to establish the infrastructure fund, and work has already started in terms of establishing this infrastructure fund. And we also want to address immediate needs that have an impact on the social life of our people, particularly in health as well as in education. But we also want to invest in municipal social infrastructure improvement. Our experience is that infrastructure development can draw many unemployed people into economic activity relatively quickly. And this we've not only seen in our own country leading up to 2010, but we see it in a number of other countries. When countries embark on huge infrastructural projects, they're able to draw many more people into the employment ranks, because manufacturing also benefits, as does construction and a number of others. The infrastructure fund we are establishing, which will be supported by a strong technical team, which will execute the projects, will ensure that infrastructure projects are implemented faster, they have greater impact on employment and job creation, as well as localization. We hope and we know that with government contributing to this fund, we will be able to create a huge and mega fund. And initially, we are going to be contributing 400 billion over the next 3 years, which we will use to leverage additional resources that we will be able to agglomerate from a number of players in the economy, from developmental finance institutions, multilateral development banks, private lenders, investors, as well as banks. Through specific economic reforms, government will unlock opportunities in sectors of the economy that have great potential for growth. And these obviously include in mining, in oil and gas, and in tourism. And tourism is one of those that we want to focus our attention on, because it is a great job creator as we relax our visa provisions and we allow many more millions to come to our country. Now, the Job Summit Framework Agreement will support this through reforms also in other areas, such as streamlining of water license applications and registrations of medicines. The stimulus plan will see the reprioritization of 50 billion of public funding towards activities that will stimulate the creation of jobs in agriculture, the township economies, and rural areas. By expanding the package of support to support black farmers, the plan will boost an underdeveloped part of the agricultural industry and also provide jobs to those who most need it. Government has also prioritized the revitalization of industrial parks, primarily in townships and in peri-urban areas, and these will create job opportunities in areas where many of our people live. This commitment to take jobs to the people also informs our plans to establish a township and rural entrepreneurship fund to support South Africans with businesses in townships as well as in rural areas. The plan will also have an impact on the filling of critical medical posts, including nurses and interns. The stimulus plan alone is not enough, as we all know. It needs to be accompanied by employment. It needs to be accompanied by bringing young people specifically into the job situation. We need to achieve growth that is inclusive and that is also redistributive. Everyone has a role to play in forging a social compact for jobs. Trade unions must continue to act as, yes, checks and balances. They must articulate and advance the interests of workers and must push back against exploitative practices and unsafe environments in the workplace. Unions have taken up the challenge to work with employers to eradicate discrimination in the workplace, to promote labor stability, to reduce income inequality, and to reach fair and sustainable agreements. Understanding that these are necessary conditions for increased levels of investment in order to create jobs. When it comes to business, firms have a specific responsibility themselves to provide goods and services and also to introduce training and new technologies and production techniques which increase competitiveness as well as productivity and reduce the negative impact on the environment. Business leaders have taken up the challenge to better recognize the value of regulatory interventions which seek to root out private sector corruption and which seek to stimulate more inclusive growth through limiting anti-competitive conduct and structures. An effective social compact requires a capable as well as a developmental state. A developmental state that has the resources as well as the administrative capacity to offer workers and working people credible and effective programs of service delivery. That type of state, a developmental one, must be capable of guiding and regulating market activity in such a way that the structure of opportunity is transformed and is also inclusive. Our country needs a new approach to growth and development, one that is informed by our collective interest, and which also harnesses the capabilities of all social partners, who should see themselves as partners who are irrevocably committed to creating a prosperous society where all our people will lead a better life in peace and in harmony. We agreed that our country cannot achieve meaningful progress without faster growth and a great deal more jobs. And we cannot achieve this if each of us as social partners work alone. We need to develop and enhance trust in each other as social partners, to understand how our shared and individual interests intersect and combine, to cooperate and to work together for a common vision and a common future, a growing economy in which the benefits are shared by everyone. Through this presidential summit, we are each as government, as labor, as communities, and as business, we are confirming our determination to build a better South Africa for all. I want to conclude by reminding us what we said in the preamble of the National Development Plan, a plan that the large majority of South Africans have embraced. We said in one of the portions of our preamble, we have created a home where everybody feels free yet bound to others, where everyone embraces their full potential. We are proud to be a community that cares. We have received the mixed legacy of inequalities in opportunity and in where we have lived. But we have agreed to change our narrative of conquest, oppression, and resistance. And may I add, as I paraphrase, unemployment, inequality, and poverty. We know what we do and how we do it is as important as what we want to achieve. What we are is because of who we have been and what we want to become. We are a people at work. We work to create plenty. Our work brings us ever closer to our dreams. Work grounds our dreams, even the most fantastic that they can be or they are. The reality of work connects us to our dreams, close quotes. These are the dreams of millions of South Africans. It is these their dreams to find work that this job summit must make a reality. And as we sign to implement the framework agreement, as we embrace this framework agreement, let us remember the dreams of all those South Africans who want to find work, those South Africans who yearn to have work. Let us, all of us collectively, go out and implement these interventions. The interventions that have been identified are real, and if we all get committed to working to implement these interventions, we will be able to fulfill the dreams of South Africans. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency.